Welcome to the Cheating Secrets channel. We hope you enjoy today's story. Are you familiar with the idea of recognizing a person by their walk? Recently, I saw a woman entering a hotel, and her way of moving and behaving reminded me a lot of my wife, Karen. Despite the dim lighting and limited visibility, her mannerisms resembled Karen's. However, I knew it couldn't be Karen because last night she was supposed to be at home. We talked on the phone, and she didn't mention anything about going out. Moreover, this hotel was far from our house. I was puzzled, especially since the man accompanying her reminded me of Darren, our boss, from the driving school where we both work. It was hard for me to believe what was happening. When I arrived at the hotel parking lot, where I stopped due to a sudden change in training location, I realized that the presence of Karen and Darren here was unlikely. I changed hotels at the last minute, according to our preliminary agreement with this hotel chain. Earlier, I tried to contact home, but I only reached Karen's voicemail. Attempts to reach Darren at the office were also unsuccessful, perhaps due to poor mobile signal in that area. However, I kept trying. After parking my car and hurrying to the hotel entrance, I discreetly peeked through the door. To my surprise, I saw my wife and boss, judging by their small suitcases, embracing each other, showing a closeness that seemed more personal than professional. What the hell is going on here? They seemed very close and gave the impression of romantic involvement. I was shaken by these observations, sat on the hotel steps, my thoughts weaving chaotically, and my breathing became deep and uneven. I was completely stunned and didn't know how to proceed, but it helped resolve many doubts that had been plaguing me in recent months. Everything suddenly became clear. Changes in schedule, changes at work, and even changes in my role. I needed time to think everything through and analyze it. Returning to my car, I parked it carefully, remembering that as a driving instructor, I should set an example both on the road and in parking. Quietly approaching the hotel entrance, I made sure the reception desk was empty, and only then did I approach it to book a room. I had been here several times before and knew Kelly, the assistant manager, well. We greeted each other and talked about various topics, which sparked my interest in previous guests who had stayed at the hotel. Noticing that these people seemed familiar to me, Kelly mentioned that they were registered under the name Mr. and Mrs. Smith. However, her doubtful expression and slightly tilted head indicated that she doubted this information. She even expressed hope that they wouldn't disturb other guests with their noisy actions during their stay. With interest, I asked Kelly how often the Smiths appear at this hotel. Sensing my concern, she asked if something had happened. I carefully noted that it might be related to my boss, but I didn't disclose details until I fully understood the situation. I assured her that I wouldn't disclose any confidential information about the hotel or its guests, especially if it involved a connection between the woman I saw and my boss. Kelly accessed the computer system and said, "Maybe I shouldn't say this, but 3 months ago, they were here for a big conference or similar event. Back then, they booked separate rooms. Since then, they've visited this hotel twice, and I've been keeping track of their visits. Because they used a credit card from the same company, I just needed to check the last 4 digits. It took me some time to sort out all my thoughts, and I decided to distract myself by heading to the bar for a pint of beer. It was an unusual morning ritual for me. When I returned to the room with my drink, I began to ponder how we ended up in this situation, realizing that a bit of additional information could be helpful. The driving school where I taught was in Salisbury, and we had a contract to train future drivers, including cars, buses, and trucks. 5 months ago, I mainly worked in the Salisbury area, covering regions like Tidworth, Walford, and Larkhill to the south. Meanwhile, other instructors dealt with areas to the north and west of the plain. Cyril worked in Amesbury to the north, and Graham handled Warminster and its surroundings. It was an exciting job interacting with young people and observing their growth in a military environment, which reminded me of my own experience. For them, the transition from teenage life to adulthood was evident. The areas where our sessions took place were scattered around the edges of Salisbury Plain, creating orientation problems without the presence of main combat vehicles or large transport vehicles. However, Cyril finished his work 5 months ago, and a few months ago, Graham had an accident, falling from a ladder which incapacitated him for a while and left a gap in the Northern Training Zone. I was tasked with temporarily overseeing the Northern Training Zone until a replacement for Graham was found and until he recovered. Although we had other instructors, most of them were young parents without military experience. Shared military experience could significantly improve the training process. Despite the challenges, Darren assured me that this would not be a permanent situation. Karen held a position in the administrative department of our driving school, dealing with various tasks such as meetings, financial operations, benefits payments, and scheduling. Instructors' work, including mine. This made me carefully monitor the budget to avoid a situation where Karen would have to report excessive spending. Every month, when I analyzed our financial reports, I couldn't help but smile at how skillfully she managed expenses, always impressing me. Contrary to idealized notions of romance, Darren wasn't particularly attractive or fit. Rather, he was average and overweight. This made me wonder why both Karen and Darren ended up at the hotel. However, considering the possibility that their presence was mutually agreed upon and possibly related to their romantic relationship, I decided not to interfere and give them space if that was indeed the case. But first and foremost, I needed evidence to tell Darren's wife, Sheila, who also worked in our Salisbury office, albeit not as frequently. Keeping my job was extremely important to me, especially considering that our children were still in university. Reflecting on our life together, I recalled that our intimacy was at a high level before the children came along. We were ready for experiments and adaptations as needed. Naturally, things changed a bit with the arrival of children, but once the kids went off to college, our relationship improved again, except for the last few months when I was busy with duties in the North Sector, causing temporary strain when I returned home on Fridays. This made me think about Karen and Darren's presence and inspired me to devise a preliminary plan or even a strategy, depending on their reaction. Feeling unappetized, I decided to go down for dinner earlier than usual to chat with the head waiter. During our conversation, I subtly asked how Mr. and Mrs. Smith would be accommodated to avoid being in their line of sight. I have visited this restaurant many times, and I have developed good relationships with the staff. The head waiter often gave me the opportunity to choose a seating place, and this time he discreetly indicated where Mr. and Mrs. Smith would be seated. Choosing a position from where I could observe them unnoticed, I assessed that the staff did not reveal my involvement in preparing the wine. Executing my plan, I watched as they arrived, exchanged hugs, which irritated me, and took their seats. After they placed their order, I signaled the head waiter to bring a bottle of Massel wine to their table, their preferred choice, on my tab, without disclosing the source. Observing the room, I noticed their reaction when the wine was brought to them, without a word spoken about its origin. Despite their conversation, including touches, smiles, and laughter, mostly from Darren's side, I remained unnoticed, realizing it was a chance encounter they couldn't have arranged for me. Her outfit caught my attention. It was a stunning dress that I hadn't seen before, especially not on her. Karen's reaction to the wine bottle indicated her discomfort, which, in my opinion, was a good sign. Approaching our usual time for our daily conversation, around 7:30 to 7:45, I stepped into the hotel's main area and dialed her number. Positioned to see her, I watched as she took her phone out of her bag, signaling someone about my call and the need to answer. After that, she headed to a quieter section of the foyer, where there was no background music playing. To record our conversation, I plugged in my headphones and started recording, evaluating the convenience of modern smartphones that allow for simultaneous talking and recording. At the hotel, my attention was drawn to a young man dressed elegantly who was filming the surroundings on his phone. His actions caught my eye, occasionally distracting me and obstructing my view of Karen. "Hello." I greeted Karen over the phone. "I just wanted to inform you about a change of plans. I tried calling the office, but I was told you had already left for home. How's your day going? Your voice sounds somewhat subdued. Is your TV on?" I lowered the volume of the TV. "It's just background noise. You know how it is at home. There's always something happening. Even when you're not around," Karen replied. "Your voice sounds different. Are you using a different phone?" "Yes, I'm using headphones to record video during our conversation." I Explained. I didn't know you could do that. What are you recording? Karen inquired. There's a guy filming everything in the hotel on camera, so I decided to capture that, I explained. Karen glanced around and noticed a man who entered the restaurant, filming what was happening on his phone. I was curious if she would understand what was going on. Her facial expression was mysterious, so I quickly changed the subject. Are you sure you're at home? The background noise sounds different than during calls from your landline phone, I observed. It's indeed your call, Karen confirmed, slightly embarrassed. I tried calling your landline, but you didn't pick up, I added. Maybe I was in the garden. Sorry for not answering your call, Karen replied. No worries. This time of year is always busy. Just relax and don't worry, I advised, using a word I usually avoid. Listen, I wanted to inform you about a change of plans, but there have been some issues. Can I call you later? Of course, darling. Just try not to call too late if I'm already in bed, Karen replied. Before we ended the conversation. Yes, it's still early for you to be in bed with someone interesting, maybe with another man? I tried to maintain a serious expression, although I'm not sure if I succeeded. Oh no, darling. You're the only man I love. No one can replace you, Karen reassured me. So how do you know? Then, I thought I was your first. Are you always looking for analogies? Well, this time I'll try to be calmer, I remarked. From my seat, I could see her getting nervous and maybe even hesitating. Okay, let's go back to your analogies, I joked, ending the conversation with a chuckle and pressing the end call button. Her face expressed astonishment, as if she was expecting a final goodbye. I love you. But it didn't come. With the phone in front of her, she just sat there, seemingly shocked. While she was distracted and looking away, which wasn't part of my initial plans, I decided to seize the moment and approached her from behind, gently patting her shoulder. She turned around in alarm, gasping, and suddenly fell to the floor. It was an unexpected turn of events, and her fall was quite strong. I hurried to the registration desk and reported that a woman had fainted. I explained that I wouldn't touch her to avoid accusations of harassment. However, one of the waiters, upon seeing her fall, immediately came to help, lifted her up, and carried her to the table where Darren was sitting. At the reception, I inquired about who was filming near the hotel. I was told that it was an influencer. Upon hearing this term, I asked for an explanation of what an influencer is, and they explained that it's a person who documents various events, gives reviews, and shares them on platforms like YouTube. I understood that they were probably expecting free accommodation, despite not working at the hotel, and should have paid for their room, but were getting complimentary breakfasts. Personally, I find this idea quite senseless. Suddenly, I thought that the phone line was still active, and I could listen to their entire conversation. Making sure the recording was ongoing, I realized that I might have rushed and pressed the wrong button, muting the sound instead of hanging up after the call. Karen recovered after the waiter helped her back to the table. I quietly returned to my table, keeping an eye on them, but they were too engrossed in their conversation to notice me. John is here, Darren. John is here, exclaimed Karen. But he's in Lanham, Darren skeptically replied. I was watching him. He even tapped me on the shoulder. That's how, in one moment I was talking to him on the phone, and in another, he was right there, explained Karen, her voice trembling slightly with excitement. He shouldn't find out about us. It will really anger him. Why would he do this if he just leaves? Afterward? Damn it. He'll be furious if he finds out, Darren muttered darkly, clearly worried. If he finds out, then Sheila will find out, and it will ruin my life. I'll call him, he decided, reaching for the phone receiver. If danger had a face, you'd be dead. Already, warned Karen. You should have thought about the consequences before starting all this. But he'll never find out, Darren ejected. Who sent us that bottle of wine? Someone who knows. My favorite Schwarzguts, Karen mused aloud. Something's not right here. Let's explain that it's just a business meeting if he's here, Darren suggested, trying to find a way to soften the situation. But why dress so candidly for an evening business meeting? Especially since I just told him I'm at home, noted Karen. Okay, let's say it's the first time, just a momentary slip-up, nothing serious, Darren proposed. He won't believe that, Karen countered. Well, if something happens a few times, it's not our fault. Darren tried to justify himself. Several times? After that symposium in this hotel, There were at least 3 occasions when you coerced me, Karen ejected. But you agreed, Darren countered. No, damn it. You drugged me and took compromising photos, Karen accused him. But you agreed voluntarily, Darren noted. You threatened me, showing photos of John and Kelly, and forced me to participate, threatening to expose them and drag me into it. I had no choice. I complied in a moment of weakness. It was just a way to pass the time while he was away, Karen explained with clear disappointment in her voice. It doesn't matter. He will find out anyway and will be furious. But you enjoyed it, Darren insisted. It was just a distracting maneuver. He's not home 3 nights a week, and coming back on Fridays. He's too tired for such games. You were just a temporary distraction. You're not as amazing as you think. You're too selfish. Karen expressed her criticism. But you like it, don't you? Darren asked, looking at Karen. If I have to do it, I can enjoy it. And with practice, one can become as good as John, she replied, excitement in her voice. That's when I decided to act. Considering our frequent encounters with young women receiving training in recording backups, all instructors had recording pens. Taking mine, I stood up and headed to their table. I heard Darren saying, I'll call him again. I hung up, but my phone continued recording. Apparently, he pressed the redial button, because I heard a loud ring as I was halfway to the table, and everyone turned to look at me, including Darren and Karen. She momentarily lost consciousness, and Darren simply uttered, "Oh damn." I sat down opposite them, drawing the attention of the entire restaurant. After waiting a few seconds for Karen to regain consciousness, I said, "You're too easy in thinking about getting rid of me, but it will be much harder." "John, it's not what it seems," Darren said. "Then what is it?" I asked sharply. "It's a party to celebrate the new contract we just signed," Darren explained. I looked at Karen, and she looked at Darren with a skeptical look that seemed to say, "What are you talking about, Darren?" "Okay, I'll pretend to believe you, even though I don't, but why are you here, far from Salisbury, dealing with this office nonsense instead of your wife?" My voice sounded serious. Turning to Darren, I added, "And what contract is this? Tell me everything. Is this another excuse for you to leave home and be with my wife?" His face turned pale. Karen sat there with a guilty conscience. My anger couldn't be contained. All my disappointment over the past few hours turned into rage. "So, you arranged all this so that I'm not home 3 nights a week, working myself to exhaustion, so you can pursue my wife and sleep with her while I'm not there? You did all this just to be with her?" I raised my voice slightly. "You're a vile and despicable bastard. Just wait until Sheila finds out." At that moment, I saw the head waiter rushing to our table. In a restrained but firm tone, he said, "Sir, you're a respected guest of this establishment. Could you please refrain from causing a scene and disrupting public order?" I glanced at him and replied, "I apologize, Paul. You're absolutely right. But in my opinion, some of your guests like to have a good time." Turning to the head waiter, I noticed that he was recording everything on a video camera. I smiled and said, "You can call this family drama in the restaurant. That would be more accurate. Let them enjoy their dinner without interference. I'm sure your hotel will appreciate it." Addressing the waiter again, I added, "I'll cover their dinner expenses. It's a negligible amount for the company, so don't worry about it." My appetite returned, and the Aberdeen Angus filet turned out to be excellent, although the price was higher than we had planned. Karen seemed about to say something, but my gaze made her fall silent. I took out my phone and took a picture of Darren and Karen together, adding it to my collection. Karen raised her hand as if asking for permission to speak, and I nodded in approval. She turned to Darren. "You told me that John asked you about the appointment up north. Is that true?" Then, looking at me, she added, "Did you ask him about it?" "For heaven's sake, I won't get out of bed to sleep in someone else's bed for a whole year," I sharply stated, flipping my phone and showing them the photo I had just taken in the hotel restaurant, where they were sitting quite close to each other. "Okay, let's discuss the truth, or this photo will go straight to Sheila, and your marriage will be at stake," I continued, looking them in the eyes. "But what about that photo of you entering Kelly's secretary's room at 10:45? Why would you go there so late if something unusual wasn't happening?" I asked, raising another photo-related question. "Show me it," demanded Karen, addressing Darren. He handed her his phone and unlocked it. giving her access to the photos. After a thorough review, she returned the phone to me, admitting he edited the photo to make it look like it was taken at 10:45. Look at the light outside. It's already dark at that time. Maybe it's the street lamps outside? Darren interjected. No, there would be different shadows then, Karen quickly countered. Damn, another deception. Darren expressed his disappointment. I asked the waiter to bring me a hotel brochure to show them the explanation of the photo. When I did that, Karen realized her mistake and confessed it was a photo shoot for advertising. Kelly just led me through a room that was not my bedroom, but an office. The looks exchanged between Karen and Darren indicated that they understood the situation, and the atmosphere became tense. She turned to Darren and yelled in anger, "Let's get this straight. You sent my husband away, telling me he asked for it, even though he didn't. You falsified photos, making it look like he had an affair, drugged me, treated me inappropriately, blackmailed and threatened my marriage and career." It took her a few minutes to compose herself, while it took me several hours to come up with a response to that. It's amazing that her slap didn't break his jaw. The whole restaurant, including the famous influencer, froze and watched us, and the atmosphere was filled with dead silence. The influencer kept recording. She was already preparing to slap him again, and I almost let her do it until I noticed a heading towards us. I grabbed her hand and whispered, "Calm down, or we'll get kicked out, and I'm not finished yet." Seeing this, the maitre d' stepped back. While dead silence reigned in the restaurant, everyone secretly stared at us, preparing for the next episode. They seemed to be enjoying it. "This is only getting worse," I said. "Maybe there's something wrong with me, but here we are."